It was the dawn of the third age of podcasting, 30 years after the series had launched.
The Babylon podcast was a dream given form. Its goal, to discuss the place where humans and aliens could work out their differences peacefully.
It's a port of call, home away from home for established fans, newbies, Jon, Blaine, and guests.
Humans and aliens wrapped in 2,500,000 tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night.
It can be a dangerous place.
Wait, what?
But it's our last, best hope for peace.
This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations.
The year is 2024.
The name of the podcast is
Babylon 5, 30 years later. Welcome to Babylon 5, 30 years later, the podcast where myself, Blaine Dowler, and John Wilson go through every episode and TV movie of Babylon 5, 30 years after it was released. How you doing, John?
I am doing well, but I don't know. I feel like if things go wrong today, that you might have like a really harsh sentence for me and I might have to plead for mercy. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. It's going to go bad today.
Just understand, spacing is actually only allowed in very specific circumstances.
Good to know. Good to know.
Okay, we are discussing Quality of Mercy.
The penultimate episode.
Of Season 1, yes. We are getting very close to the end of this first season.
And yet still so far away because we have several months before the finale.
Yep. Yes. But at least because we don't have to record with the same delays that we have for release. We'll get there sooner, but sadly the poor listeners who are just following along are going to need a little more time.
Mm-hmm.
But we will have some content for you guys in the wait. Because yes, this Quality of Mercy first aired on Wednesday, August 17th, 1994. And then we will return for the season finale on October 6th. Or October 26th, of this year. So a little bit of a delay. This episode, even though it aired 21st in the season, was actually the 17th to be produced. So everything that was produced after this, we have actually already covered.
Alrighty.
It was written by J. Michael Straczynski, as we will often find at the start and ends of seasons, and starting with Season 3, the middles as well. It was directed by Lorraine Ferrara, as Lorraine Senna Ferrara. This is her only Babylon 5 directing credit. She was the second AD on Somewhere in Time. So she was directing, that's the second AD job, is a lot of establishing shots and pickups. So usually the first assistant director is following the director's instructions, doing the non-core cast members. And then the second AD is the one that films your establishing shots, like, oh, look at this pretty house that they're in right now, as we're hearing with voiceover. Mm-hmm. That the actors may never see until the movie is finished. But she also directed one episode of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman.
I was looking at that. That Old Gang of Mine is the second season episode. I've only seen the first season of that show. So, I'll be curious to see how that goes when I get there in my Superman read-through.
Okay. Yeah, my first reaction hearing you've only seen the first season is, wow, from John. And then my second reaction is, oh, wait, he's still reading the comics that came on in between seasons, and he's waiting to catch up.
Yes.
Do it all in chronological order, because that's who John is.
Right. Well, I had, when I was reading Post-Crisis, along with From Crisis to Crisis, I had read through The Death and The Return, and that's whenever the Lois and Clark series started. And so I was reading, and I got through the first season-ish of that show in those comics, and then I got distracted by other things. So now with my having read every Superman comic ever read-through, I'm once again full circle. I'm at the death and funeral era. So I will once again be getting to 1994, but this time having read everything before it. So, I don't know that does anything for me. I don't know how I can monetize that, but there it is.
Okay, well, we just need a few more listeners to the podcast. That'll monetize, hopefully. But we will see how that goes. So, a basic plot summary of this episode. We have a couple of plot threads running. I would say the main plot is where Dr. Franklin... First, he is caught by Ivanova running a free clinic down below. Because apparently, with all the things going on in the future, we still have for-profit medicine in places. As we're hearing this, I'm in Canada right now, where today we have totally public healthcare, which works. But our premier is trying to introduce private healthcare, and many people are disturbed.
Because that would basically undo the awesome healthcare setup that y'all have right now. Or at least undermine it.
Yeah, it is something that seems to drive profit to certain individuals, but the benefits to the actual people are not clear. Mm-hmm. But anyway, when he's running this free clinic, he finds out that there's fewer patients in line than usual. So he goes to find out why. And apparently there's someone that he assumes is a crank or a quack with some sort of miracle cure device. And he confronts her, says he's going to look into it. But as he starts his investigation, he finds out that, no, these people who are coming to her and getting strapped into this alien device with her are legitimately getting better. And as he's working with this and trying to learn more about this woman, he is getting to know her daughter a little bit better, and ultimately discovers that what this is a life energy transferal machine. And as we will eventually learn, it doesn't just transfer life energies. We can actually transfer an illness from one patient to another. So it was originally created by some currently unknown alien species, at least unidentified, or maybe better way to put it than unknown. And they would use this to punish criminals. So this was their death sentence instead of just gas chamber or electrocution. No, they strap you up to a sick person, and they crank the dial, and the sick person becomes healthy, and the criminal becomes dead, or very close to it. And this doctor is just doing little bits at a time. She's not using it on the highest setting, and she is slowly draining her own health, because she has a terminal disorder, to help others. Now this dovetails into the other major plot. I honestly don't know which I would call the A and B plot of these two, because they get kind of equal share.
And they both tie nicely into the title.
They do. There's a lot of thematic tie-ins, and they largely conclude in the same place at the same time. So we see someone in the Babylon 5 justice system. We have a man who has been convicted of murder, and his sentence is death of personality. So they can't throw someone out the airlock unless it's treason or mutiny or something very specific and very military. And then if they send them to anywhere else, the other person has to take them. Earth doesn't want them for a life sentence or a death penalty there. And anyone else is saying, yeah, you can send them to our penal colonies, but you have to pay transportation. And no one's willing to pay that bill. So he is sentenced to death of personality, which means first, Talia Winters has to scan his mind to get a feel for what personality is there now. Anything she finds is not admissible in court. She just has to get a sense of who he is. They will then hook him up to a device that wipes out his personality and implants a new personality complete with new memories, at which point Talia or another resident telepath, whoever did the first scan, would scan him again to make sure, yes, this is the new personality and not the old one. Except this criminal, not only does Talia find out during the scan that Garibaldi's right, he is killed before. The way he killed them did not seem like a first offender, and he wasn't. Not that that is admissible in court, but before he can get his personality wiped, he escapes. And he is injured in the escape and ends up going to the doctor that Dr. Franklin was investigating, and when he threatens to kill her daughter, she decides to crank up the machine in full and transfer her disease to this criminal, and basically wipe him out with the transference in the other direction, which is something that she has to live with, being a doctor who was disgraced after taking too many stims to work and getting addicted. Now she has to live with the fact that she violated her Hippocratic oath and willingly took a life. Garibaldi assured her it was the right thing to do. She admits it was the necessary thing, but that doesn't make it right. And she goes to make amends. The third plotline is one where Londo is being tasked by his superiors to basically make more connections with those on the station. So he tries to connect with Lanier. And in the process discovers that Lanier has led a sheltered life, but is excellent with probabilities. He gained the level of Master Adept. So naturally, Londo takes Lanier with him to play poker, and Lanier starts cleaning house. Londo starts using some of his Centauri appendages to cheat, gets caught, and they are driven out. And Lanier takes the full blame because helping another save face is an honorable act for the Minbari. Because they are of the ambassadorial status, they cannot be prosecuted, but Sinclair says, yeah, you are going to have to pay for damages for the bar fight that broke out after they found out you were cheating, even though he didn't know all those details, but essentially pay for the damages, which they agreed to do. So would you say that about covers it, or did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think that's got it. It's interesting having 3 separate plots like that, because we usually have a pretty solid A plot and B plot, but the quality of Mercy title is wrapped up in 2 major plot lines, and then you have the fun, somewhat silly diversion with Londo and Lanier.
Yes, which is interesting. Reading Straczynski's notes about this one, because of the production cycles, this is one that had to be written over the Christmas break, when he was incredibly sick with the flu. It is to the point where he sat down, wrote part of the first page, and figured, let's have Londo do the equivalent of giving the middle finger to this Centauri representative who's giving him the orders. And he was trying to think of what he could do with that, and decided that the Centauri genitalia, which we had seen in the statue several episodes ago, I think it was, episode 4 or 5, Parliament of Dreams.
Which they bring the statue back.
Yeah, the statue is back. He decides, okay, it's attached to the chest, and then he blanked out. And when he came through the haze of the flu and the medication and the Dayquil, being told he basically didn't leave bed, he would wake up, type, slug some Dayquil, work till he passed out. He just came to with a complete script in front of him that he has absolutely no memory of writing.
I mean, it's worth pointing out that this is one of the more humorous things this show has done, where Londo and Lanier are sitting there playing poker, and Londo starts making, like, I don't know, weird coughing, whistling sounds, and he undoes, like, a pocket or a flap on his jacket, and then, with no direct connection, you see this sort of weird tail-like structure with, like, a flat flap on the end of it. Like you might see on a drawing of a squid. You know, at the end of the squid's tentacle is like this weird spade thing. And it somehow Sticky pulls a card off of a deck on one end of the poker table and puts a card on a deck at the other end of the poker table. And it just goes on about its business. And he does this 2 or 3 times over the course of the episode. And it's not until the end of the episode that you realize exactly what that was. That Londo was not only exposing in public, but using prehensilely to cheat at poker. Which is got to be pretty impressive, I must say.
It is, and when he explains to Lanier what it was, Lanier's response is that he's going to take a vow of silence regarding this entire conversation.
As he should. But it's more about the Centauri than I ever expected to know in the course of the Babylon 5 TV show.
Okay, so a few notable things. We should go through the guest cast, because there are some that are definitely worth mentioning.
Well, the most of which is probably our Dr. Laura Rosen character, who is a pretty big name.
Yes, apparently ever since the day he was cast, Bill Mumy was hounding JMS to cast some of his former castmates from the Lost in Space series. And JMS, he's like an imp or the classic genie in the bottle. If you push him and push him and push him, he is going to twist what you want before he gives it to you.
Yeah.
Or if he gives it to you at all. So, yes, they cast June Lockhart, who is probably best known as Maureen Robinson in the original Lost in Space and has roles in both the movie and the Netflix reboot. But he cast her in a role where she does not share a single scene with Lanier.
Yes.
So Bill Mumy did manage to get into one scene with her because he snuck in without the makeup and walks past her in one of her hallway scenes when JMS was not on the stage. So you can find them on screen together again, but yes, they do not actually have any communication.
And since Mumy's role on the show is, recurring, and he's only in X number of episodes for the entire season, the fact that they were even in the same episode at all was, not necessarily guaranteed. But they were, and in character did not share a scene.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think she's probably the big one. Others worth mentioning, Mark Ralston is here, who often plays tough guys. He was Boggs Diamond in The Shawshank Redemption, Private Drake in Aliens, Agent Russ in Rush Hour, and Delahunt in The Departed. I actually know him because he had 2 guest appearances on The X-Files. But yeah, he's got a fairly lengthy IMDb credit, and he plays the killer here.
I do remember him from Star Trek The Next Generation. He's in an episode where they're trying to solve a death situation. Was it murder? Was it suicide? And it's a situation where, like, the thing that led the person to their death is still active and is calling other crew members. I think it's Dr. Crusher, maybe, to do the same thing. I think that's the one. And you get lots and lots of shots of this person, Mark Rolston's face, in like a fisheye lens. So it's like sort of distorted toward the camera. So his face is really like memorable in my mind because it's, sort of a haunting bit of camera work they do with his face. So much so that when I saw him on trial at the beginning of this episode, I just assumed I knew him from earlier in the season. That we were seeing a follow-up in continuity, a character having committed crimes earlier in the season being brought to trial here. And I totally thought that was the case until we logged on to do this episode and I looked him up 10 minutes ago to see what that episode was. Oh, wait, it's not that one. It's that Star Trek episode. That's where I know him from.
Yep. Season 7, Episode 18, Eye of the Beholder.
Yes. So, yeah. Carl Mueller is not from a previous Babylon 5 episode, contrary to popular opinion. And by popular opinion, I mean my own misconception.
Oh, but no, he is a guy. He does have a habit of playing the tough guys. So yes, he was in Next Gen, Angel, Dark Angel, Alias, Touched by an Angel.
Lots of
he
angels.
I was going to say he likes shows with angels in the title. And he comes back in 2 episodes of Star Trek Enterprise. An episode of Reaper, which I always thought was underrated and deserved more than the 2 seasons it got. So, but yeah, he's got quite the resume behind him.
Lots and lots of voice acting as well as face acting.
Yep. Damien London is an interesting one. He plays the Centauri on the screen. So he's got a very small part, but he found a way to play it that was unlike everyone else who auditioned for the role that JMS loved. So JMS had one attitude of mind that everybody else brought in. London came in and played it completely differently, and JMS went, oh, that's good. He is very good in this role. So what was meant to be a one-off character that we see for maybe 90 seconds? Is that about right?
Mm-hmm.
This is his first of 9 appearances on Babylon 5.
Nice. Yeah, I remember that scene. In my memory, it was a woman that he was talking to. So I don't know if it's just like my own misperceptions of the scene. But it was neat because we haven't had a lot of Londo recently. So to have an episode that starts on Londo and the Centauri doing Londo Centauri stuff was nice. And of course that leads into some very comedic stuff with Lemire.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, other members of the guest cast. We've got David L. Crowley appearing as Lou Welch for the 3rd time. He was a character created by Mark Scott Zickery when he wrote Survivors, as we learned when we had that delightful chat with him.
Is he the character that would have been like Officer Number 3, but they gave him a name?
Yep. Yes, the bald-headed security officer.
Mm-hmm.
The one who Franklin said, if I'm not back in 20 minutes, send a team, tell Garibaldi I'm going to Brown 27G.
Yes.
We've got Kate McNeil as the Doctor's daughter.
Janice Rosen.
Yes.
When Franklin first sees her in the hallway, he's like, I'm looking for this doctor. She's a bit of a quack. I half expected her to say, oh, nice to know your opinion. My name is, that she is the doctor. The fact that she's the daughter was also a nice turn of events.
Yeah. They don't like to lean too hard into the cliches. If it feels like something is going to be the cliche at first, it's because there's a twist that's still coming. But yeah, she's best known for work in Monkey Shines, Space Cowboys, Sudden Death, and The House on Sorority Row.
None of which I saw.
No, and Franklin promises her mother that yes, he will take care of Janice, This is her only Babylon 5 appearance.
I did wonder about that, because they didn't go romantic, but they hinted that there might be romantic potential in the future. And so I was wondering if this is going to be a new relationship with Franklin on the show. But no, it's not.
Others uncredited, we've got Jim Norton back as Ombuds Wellington. This is his second appearance as this character. He will appear again in the future as other characters. We have Carl Ciarfalio, or Charfalio, I think. He works often with stunts and then seems to moved into the second unit directing as he got a bit older. Those of us who are comic nerds might know him best as the Thing from the Roger Corman-produced Fantastic Four movie. But he also has a lot of roles as, people that... small parts that should be played by stunt people, because they tend to get thrown around or throw others around and that sort of thing. So he plays... in this one, he plays one of the poker-playing aliens. And then it's also worth noting Bill Blair. I don't know if we've mentioned him by name before. He actually holds the Guinness World Record for appearing under prosthetics in the widest variety of characters.
Really?
Yeah, including 69 episodes of Babylon 5.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and 45 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So 2 episodes of Voyager, 4 episodes of Enterprise. So, yeah, he's credited here as Alien, as often happens. He's just aliens, but yes, he shows up a lot, and you don't cast someone that many times in these parts unless they are a good person to work with. So I think those are the main particulars for the production end.
Mm-hmm.
So on the whole, what did you think of this episode?
I thought it was pretty interesting in that it addressed some concepts that we often see addressed in science fiction, but I don't think that they went for the common conclusions that we see. I was watching this one with Mindy, and she wholly disagreed with Dr. Rosen's conflict at the end. It's like, you do what you got to do. And, this was somebody who was going to murder a bunch of people. You took care of it. Get past your conflict. But just the idea of, it's not even, the question is not whether or not to have mercy, but what mercy looks like in different contexts and what it means. And so I thought the title was really apropos. It's the quality of mercy. What does it look like if you're sparing somebody's life, but only dooming them to a non-life? Is that really mercy? It sounds like a technicality for saying Superman didn't kill somebody because they still exist as a vegetable. Well, yeah, but is that better? And mercy with giving people healing, but it's taking away your own life to do so. Just a lot of really interesting things being tossed around and discussed and digested in this episode that I rather enjoyed. Yeah.
For Dr. Rosen, I do wonder if she would have struggled as much if she knew what Talia knew.
Mm.
Right, because Talia couldn't share that. But as viewers,
we saw it.
Yeah, obviously we encourage our listeners to be watching along, but if that's not the case, when Talia is scanning him, we find out that he has killed seemingly dozens of people because it is his belief that every person he kills adds a voice to a choir, and that choir has to sing him up to heaven when everything is said and done.
That's only a lot weird.
Yeah. So, yes, the longer this personality and this person survive, the more people die.
Mm-hmm.
So, as viewers, we know that. So, it is probably easier for us to accept Dr. Rosen's actions than it is for her. Even if she knows that after the trial, if Talia took her aside and said, this is what this person is really like, to help her with it, that is not something she knew when she made the call.
Right.
So I get her struggle as someone who's devoted to healing. So, yeah, I am with Garibaldi that even if you don't call it the right choice, it was the necessary, the least evil action on the table at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important to note that not putting an easy pat answer to situations like this is important when writing. So leaving us with different sides of a situation, leaving us with different ways of looking at it is to my mind, the better choice for the episode's writing, rather than just saying, yep, and this is why he died.
Yeah, I think that is actually one of the fundamental differences between Babylon 5 and Star Trek. I know we said we wouldn't compare, but right now I'm contrasting, so we're okay. Star Trek is far more likely to have what Mission Log calls the "you see Timmy" moment, where someone gives a speech and tells you, this is why this is the right action without question. A leads to B leads to C, and therefore this is correct. Whereas Babylon 5 is more likely to ask the questions that start those conversations without giving you a definitive answer.
Mm. And with Star Trek, the viewer can choose to question the actor or the character's choices and come to their conclusions about the characters, but the episodes themselves usually present those choices as the right and necessary ones at the time.
Yeah, with Star Trek, you're usually not picking which hero to agree with. You are deciding whether or not you agree with all of the heroes and the consensus they have come to by the time the episode is done.
Mm-hmm.
Even when there's conflict in between, like the conflict between, say, Ensign Rowe and Commander Troy in the episode Disaster. At the end, they come to terms with it, where Rowe says, okay, turns out you were right, and Troy says, oh, I could have easily been wrong, right? They make that peace. But there's that acknowledgement, oh, you were the right one.
Yeah. We had a largely Ivanova-less episode this time around, which is always a shame. But she made great use of the time she had on screen. I liked her confrontation with Franklin, and then her choice to acknowledge that life is a gray area and agreeing to help out rather than prosecute. It did make me wonder if she was leaving behind her CNC duties to go help, with nursing responsibilities. But, hey, I'll leave that up to her. She does her job.
Yeah, I really like her attitude where she makes it clear, no, do what you have to do. I just don't want to find out about it through the grapevine. You come tell me, and I will do it. So.
And since this was a Talia Winters episode, not rehashing the Ivanova Winters animosity was probably a good choice. We've seen that enough recently that we don't need to necessarily be reminded again unless there's something important they're going to do with it.
Yeah.
They can do other things with the Winters character. Which, yeah, her whole, conflict in this episode of not at all wanting to do what she's being forced to do, and yet her talent, her ability makes her an instrument of law enforcement, a reluctant and unwilling instrument of law enforcement, but also mandatory. That's a whole thing. That was interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of this episode came from Harlan Ellison saying, look, you got all these people on this station. You're going to have issues, right? This alien ate my dog, or someone gets punched and someone's getting sued. You're not going to want to have to haul back to Earth for every one of these cases, right? Some of them won't even recognize Earth. You have to have a justice system on the station. So this was partly about exploring not just the justice system, but the implications for the laws in a system or in a universe where telepaths are confirmed to exist. So that's part of what we had here, was JMS just exploring that and laying down some of the rules for what telepaths can and cannot do. Explicitly saying that, yes, telepaths cannot scan, consent, and even what they find might not be admissible in a court of law because the telepath might be making it up. Partly to answer questions people had about the Gathering when they were saying, why didn't Lita just scan Sinclair to see if he killed Kosh or not?
Mm-hmm.
It's because it would not necessarily have been admissible in court, and that's part of what they were formally establishing here.
And you do have to have your universe rules, what those things are. So using story to tell that instead of just saying it outright is a good way to go about this. But I find myself taking an increasing liking to Andrea Thompson's portrayal of Talia Winters, because I can't say I loved her first couple of episodes, but she really showed the conflict in this very nicely. And her I can't think of a better word than just pain, than having to go through that man's mind and see it. That was, very well done.
Yeah, she definitely delivered this time around. So did you have any more comments for our League in Session portion with the general discussion, or did you want to move on to Last Best Hope?
Trying to think, it was just a solid episode. the stuff with Dr. Rosen, the fact that she was hiding from her daughter, that she was giving up her life every time she helped somebody. And it seems like the sort of thing like, you give up your life energy, but if you rest and eat and have some good proteins, then you could probably build that back, like giving blood or whatever. So she was able to, keep it hidden until the end of the episode, of course. But just like that choice on her part was a big deal. I really enjoyed Lanier's naivete through all of this, because I feel like Bill Mumy plays naivete not as wide-eyed and awestruck, but as subdued. And it plays really, really well. It's not over the top, hardly ever. And so seeing him getting involved in poker and everything, yes, he has, probability skills that helps him play well, but I don't think they ever went too far with it. I enjoyed that. I don't know. I really liked the episode. I really liked the complexity of it. There were 3 different plot lines, and they all worked really well.
Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that 2 of them had very different tones from the third.
Yes.
The Londo Lanier plotline was almost pure comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Right down to even Londo ordering 2 of the usual. And Lanier says, well, mine doesn't have alcohol. And Londo's saying, of course not. And then Lanier expands, we've heard before that the Minbari do not respond well to alcohol. This is where he says, yeah, well, that's good, because my race don't get drunk. We go into violent, rampaging, murderous rages. And then Londo just goes, oops, and takes the drink away and orders him a water.
Okay, we should go into the next segment then, because you stole my punch.
Okay.
No, it's fine though. It's fine.
Yes. So the last best hope, that was...
Yeah, it was a great moment, because you're right. This is there's so much seriousness in this episode, and I am not of the opinion that you need comedy in a serious tone story. You don't. You can have a serious tone story that is serious tone. That's just the way the tone is. And the fact that this comedy was largely subtle, I think helped maintain the gravity of the tone of the main 2 plot lines. But when they had the jokes, they were just so good. And that was like the prime example when Londo orders a drink when they're at the stripper club, and he gives it to Lanier, and Lanier's like, it's a good thing this doesn't have alcohol, because, my people, we can't handle our alcohol. And you figure, like, can't handle their alcohol, they'll pass out. They'll get drunk really fast and not be able to, function or whatever. But no, violent, homicidal rages, let's take that glass back. Let's not worry about him having alcohol after, whatever. But combine that with Lanier's nice combination of reluctance to be seeing what he's seeing, but also interest in what he's seeing. Bill Mumy played that well. I think Bill Mumy just takes it this episode.
Yeah, he walks that line. You believe the naivete, but at the same time, when the bar fight breaks out and he puts 4 of them down in seconds, you buy that too.
Oh, dude, when he starts like jump kicking him, it's like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that's very well established. Even the religious caste. He's not warrior caste. He's religious caste. But he knows how to fight.
Well, he's a Final Fantasy monk.
Yeah. Yes, perhaps not as well endowed as Tifa Lockhart. More like Sabin. He could suplex a train.
Right.
Yes, because I can make any Final Fantasy reference.
Well, Monk always has to be on my team in the original game, because after the first few levels, he is your most awesome fighter you'll ever have.
Oh, he is my team in the original game. 4 black belts.
4 black belts is your team? Nice.
Yeah, you have to spend up until everyone's about level 7 walking back and forth in front of that first town, because it takes a while to get strong enough.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, you can just essentially walk through the rest of the game. And you're never hurting for gil, because you're not buying spells or the expensive weapons and armor.
Oh, you're right.
And the class change for them doesn't change how their stats grow. So you can grind as much as you want early on, including the Power Peninsula that was removed in the Pixel remasters. But yes, I have taken those monks into Final Fantasy many times, and still haven't quite hit the point where I could defeat Chaos in 1 round. It consistently takes 2.
2 rounds, though, to beat Chaos. Wow. I guess I know what I'm doing next time I play Final Fantasy through.
Yeah, just to beat him in 2 rounds, it has to be the classic version where the highest level is 50. Things like Pixel remasters, when you go up to 99, Chaos has a lot more hit points. Originally, he only had 2,000.
So the bad guys get stronger when your guys get stronger in the remasters?
No, just the boss in the original was too easy, so they made him tougher.
Gotcha.
But anyway, this is not a Final Fantasy podcast. I did that in a crossover with No Consoles for Old Men, the co-host David Walker, a few years ago for the Final Fantasy 30th anniversary. So that 4-hour podcast is out there in the feeds if you want to check it out.
It's out there.
Yes, we went through all the Final Fantasy games that had been released up to that point, which was, I think, about 85 when you include all the mobiles and spin-offs.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Including some where the discussion was, well, this exists, but it's only in Japan and we're not there, so we haven't played it. Next. But yeah, I'm also going to give the standout moments to Linear and Londo in that. For me, it wasn't so much actually in the bar, but afterwards when Sinclair is confronting them, and Linear just says, basically, it's all me. So he claimed it was, instead of the truth where Londo came up to him and said, I'll take you under my wing in a form of manipulation, he said, yep, I haven't experienced much, so I came to Londo and asked me to show me around the station. I accidentally created a fence, and that led to the fight, for which I am sorry. But it's entirely my fault. And there was no mention of the cheating at cards, no mention of anything. So I think that scene, starting with Linear taking the full responsibility and ending with his vow of silence, was just the nice way to tie up the episode.
Yeah. Well done all around for him. He's a good guy. And it took us so long to get him, like 7 episodes before he even showed up on the station.
So, is it time to give form to the dream?
Yes, and to be honest, there's one other thing about this whole episode that I didn't talk about earlier that might be informing here. The energy transference device. Like, if I recall correctly, what part of the sentence was that be remanded to the military for study. And so I figure, just like they took weapons from, was it the archaeology dig earlier in the season? So I didn't know if this was playing into that same idea for our future mistrust of Earth government and military.
This one, when it was entrusted to Earth Force, it was actually specifically entrusted to Dr. Franklin and Menlab.
And Franklin's a good guy, so we can trust him.
Yeah, at the very least, for giving form to the dream, we'll see the machine again.
Okay. The machine is not gone.
Yes. Other things of note. The technology exists to put a new personality into a person.
Oh, yeah. So you could meet somebody with a face, and then years later meet that same face but have a different personality.
Yeah. So we will see that. We will actually see death of personality again as a punishment in a later season.
Okay.
Again, we said that this particular Centauri will appear again. I don't believe this is the last time we will make reference to what happens to a drunk Minbari.
Oh, yeah. Once you establish that in your world building, you can't just let it sit there. You have to use that again in the story.
Yeah, the other part that is established, it's actually the second time it's been brought up. So if we go back to Dr. Kyle in The Gathering, we find out that he used stims to get through the shift.
Mm-hmm.
And here, our doctor was disgraced because she got addicted to stims to keep up with the workload that she had.
Okay.
So that's the second time, and not the final time, that concept has come up.
Gotcha. Well, drugs are bad, kids.
Mm-hmm. So, I think from there we can move on to the comlink. So people who are looking to get in touch with us are heartily encouraged to do so. Particularly since, if all goes according to plan, the next time you hear from us, or at least one of the episodes in this break, we'll see what order they come in, will be a feedback episode.
Mm-hmm.
So one way to send us the feedback for an episode that is currently scheduled for Saturday, September 7th. So if you want us, we're probably going to record about a week in advance. So if you want to get in for that feedback episode, which we hardly encourage you to do, please reach out by the end of August.
I don't want to correct you, but I'm going to correct you.
Yes.
According to the columns, it's coming out the 14th, so right in by the 7th.
Right, the 7th is the recording date. If we kept on that original schedule, but now we're recording on Sundays. So, but yes, please send us feedback. One place to send that feedback is to Babylon5 30 years later at gmail.com. And you can use letters or numerals for those numbers. We've captured all 4 email addresses.
You can also leave comments on the websites where this show is hosted. The first of which is my website, johnreadscomics.com. There is no H in John.
The next one is bureau42.com. That's where all of my podcasts are hosted.
And there is no H in Bureau 42.
No.
You can also leave a review at your podcatcher of choice. We do monitor Apple Podcasts, so if you leave a review there, we'll be happy to read it on the air and acknowledge you and thank you and, send you flowers and maybe, baptize your grandchildren, whatever. But if you leave your review on another podcatcher and you would like us to acknowledge you on the air, just drop us a line through one of the other methods and say, hey, I left a review, and we'll go get it and read it and thank you for it here on the microphone.
Yes, and then the other place that you can leave comments is on our YouTube channel and on the posts that we have there, where all of the episodes are organized in multiple playlists, so you could choose to focus just on the show or include the ancillary material or just do season 1 because you've got physical DVDs and you've just binged season 1 and then want to go through it, organizing the playlist to give you all the flexibility that you would like in that regard. As we said over the break, we will have feedback episodes and another episode with a guest on to discuss the first regular TV writing job that J. Michael Straczynski had. We'll be focusing on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, specifically the 9 episodes that Straczynski himself wrote.
I'm looking forward to this little journey through other contributions to TV that Straczynski has made, because a lot of our childhood has his fingerprints on it. So, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is the first of these episodes. It's going to be interesting. I actually have not started watching the 9 episodes yet as we're recording this. That's in my job to do over the course of this next week. So, yes, lots of He-Man in my future, and we'll be back to talk about it in a few weeks.
Yes. And then after the He-Man, come back on October 26th, and we will cover Chrysalis, the Season 1 finale. So, until then, thank you for listening.
And good eating to you.